Alright guys, so in today's video we're going to be doing a durability modification to my 2023 Raptor. So my game plan with this truck is to really drive this thing into the ground. We're talking 125, 150,000 mile plus, possibly give this to my son as his first car. So longevity with this truck is really important to me. So we did all the fun stuff like the tune, the bumper, the intercooler, the intake, all that good stuff. Now it's time to start looking at things that are going to increase the life of the truck. And one of the things that you got to kind of fight against is oil blow by. And basically what I mean by that is in the PCV system, what happens is oil particles end up flying through the PCV system, they get routed back through the intake, which could cause detonation. So the way to combat that is adding a catch can. However, I don't run a catch can on this, and the reason I didn't want to run a catch can on this for the longest time, and I haven't run on any other trucks in the past, is because I don't want to introduce another maintenance item. So the big thing is, if I'm going to install a catch can, I want to install one that's 100% maintenance free. Basically, I install it, I set it, and forget it. So in today's video, we're going to be installing a catch can that does just that. One, it stops oil blow by collecting everything in the canister. The second thing it does, and my favorite part about it, is it reroutes that collected oil right back into the oil intake side and then right back into your engine block. So you keep that oil within the system rather than letting it go through your intake system. So let's get everything out of the box and then we'll dive into the installation.
All right, so let's take a look at the kit that we'll be installing today. So this is the IAG AOS. So this is part number ENG F7900RD. RD because I went with the red kit. There's also a blue kit as well as a black kit. I think the red's gonna look nice on the engine bay. But let's get things out of the box here. So at the heart of the kit is the can itself. This thing is absolutely beautiful. Billet aluminum, and like I said, I went with the red kit, so it's powder coated red. The other ones are blue and black. I believe on the Subarus, they got some green options, pretty dope. But anyway, this ties into two systems on your truck. It's gonna tie into your PCV system, which allows those vapors to enter the can. They're gonna circle inside the can itself. The oil is gonna drop out. It's gonna exit the bottom of the can through here, back into your engine. The second system that this is gonna tie into is your coolant system. And the reason being is there's a little heat exchanger in here. So you send hot coolant in here, it's gonna go through here. It's gonna keep things nice and warm, which will allow the oil that's leaving the can to exit and go back in your engine pretty smoothly. So with that, it comes with lots of tubing. So a lot of spaghetti here. One thing I will say is when you get a kit like this with a lot of parts, I would definitely recommend hopping on the manufacturer's website. So I was on IAG's website. They have a really good installation manual, but they also have a parts list. So you can run through and make sure you have everything before you dive into the installation. The big thing, like I said, the big benefit of this one is because it returns oil here. So this is a new oil fill neck. And this is where the oil leaves the can and then enters the engine right here. So we're gonna be replacing the oil fill neck here on the truck with this new one in the kit. Get some brackets here. Last but not least, and a thing that's a dying art, is manufacturer sending stickers. You don't get these anymore. So IAG, kudos. Anyway, let's get everything out of the way and let's dive into the installation. All right. As far as tools that you need for the installation, pretty simple. So we'll start left to right. You're gonna need some snips for all the zip ties. You're gonna be using a ton of zip ties for hose management. You're gonna need a clamp there for clamping off the coolant system so you can install the new hose. Some needle nose pliers for those clamps. Flathead screwdrivers are super helpful for removing the PCV tube, particularly on the driver's side if you have the orange permanent ones that you need to kind of destroy to get them off. And then a socket set. Within the socket set, if you have a swivel joint, definitely have that available. It will make installing the catch can up against the truck a lot easier. But again, basic tools, let's get into the installation. All right, so the first thing we need to do is remove a few parts. So the first thing I'm gonna do is remove my air intake here. Now yours might be different if you got a factory one, but the steps are about the same. Undo the pipe clamps, we'll pull this guy out. Make sure you unplug the sensor, that way you're not messing with anything there. And then we'll get this out of the way, it'll allow us clean access to the engine. Second thing we need to remove is the engine cover. So there's a 10mm bolt on each side. We're gonna remove that, pull the cover off. That'll give us access to all the lines. And once we do that, we can get the camera in there closer, and then we can start installing or removing some of our lines first, and then installing some of the new ones. So let's get going here. All right, now that we got the engine cover and the air intake out of the way, let's take a look at the three things that we got to remove. First thing on the passenger side is our PCV line. Very simple, there's little blue clips here. We're just gonna pull that tab and this line will pop straight off. We're not gonna reuse these, so we're gonna remove it from the crankcase here. I'm sorry, from the intake manifold here, and then from the crankcase, and then we'll be good to go on that side. Second thing we're gonna remove is the factory oil fill neck. This just twists right off, and we'll get into that in a second, but we're replacing that with the IAG kit. Third thing we're gonna need to remove, which is gonna be probably the trickiest part of the installation, is the passenger side PCV line. So that's this line right here. It goes from your turbo inlet pipe all the way up here into your crankcase. The reason why this is gonna be tricky, you see this little orange fitting right there? Those are what are considered one-time use fittings. This is a mission-related pipe. So basically, Ford recommends every time you touch those, you replace it. And the way they make you kind of force you to do that is they make these clips kind of one-time use. So you might end up cracking this clip. That is okay. You will not use that line in the IAG kit. They give you new lines to replace it. We'll be good to go. So let's get those 3 pieces off and keep the installation moving forward here. Okay, I wanted to show you the driver's side PCV valve, so just confirming that this is a one-time use thing. You will need to break it or crack it to get it off. Just be careful. I use a small little flathead to basically break or peel off the little shield, the black plastic shield around the orange portion. Once you do that, then you can get access to the tabs with a little small flathead. I need to do the same thing on the engine side, but I just want to show you kind of a clear view of what it looks like. While we're over here, let's go ahead and get our oil cap off. And I just want to show you how easy this guy is. Just grab it, turn it counterclockwise, and then the neck itself just pulls right off. And all we're going to do is just replace this with the one that comes in the IAG. All right, so here are both the PCV lines here. This is the passenger side one. You can see the blue clips. These are a lot easier to pull off. You just take the tab here, push it, and it opens up the clip itself just like that. Pull it right off. Super simple. Lay that aside. We don't need that anymore. Then we have our driver's side one. This one's a little bit of a bear, and like I said, this is the one-time use one. You can see the fitting that goes on the engine kind of chewed up, and then the one that goes into the turbo inlet pipe also equally chewed up. But ultimately, these are made to be destroyed when you remove them. So we're gonna lay this aside. We don't need these guys anymore. All right, so with those 3 pieces out of the way, the last thing we're gonna need to remove and set aside is that brown fitting right there. We're gonna reuse that with the IAG kit, but we need to remove it because that's how you attach the IAG kit to a couple of the lines here so that you can attach the fitting, and there's a fitting in the kit. But next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna locate the oil fill neck. We're gonna install that guy, get our oil cap back installed on there, and then we're gonna start prepping the can. You can attach a lot of the pipes on the can before you even install it. That way, once it's in there, you can start routing all that spaghetti. But let's get the oil fill neck installed. Let's get the IAG prepped, and then we can get that guy mounted, and he's gonna go right there. All right, so now we're gonna prepare our IAG AOS so we can install it in the truck. You're gonna wonder why I have a tape measure out here. Well, in the instructions, they give a lot of the direction based on the length of the tube. So go ahead and find your 26-inch tube as well as your 21-inch tube. These are your coolant pipes, and you could verify that by measuring it, obviously. These are gonna tie into the bottom of the can, and we can install these before we put it in the truck because it's a lot easier to do this with this out of the truck. So first thing we're gonna do is take our longer of the pipes. So this is our 26-inch one. And we're just gonna take it and pop it right on this fitting. These are quick connect fittings, so if you put it on the wrong one, it's very easy to remove it. Take our shorter one, pop it on there. We're good to go. Now the next thing we can do is find our bracket as well as our hex head hardware in the kit, and we're going to install the bracket on the back of the IAG AOS. On mine, it's a 23, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3 holes up, install the bracket just like that. There is different instructions for the 2024 and newer trucks, so just follow that within the kit itself. But let's go ahead and get this bracket installed on here. Then I'll show you where we're gonna be installing this in the truck, and then we can keep the installation moving forward. All right, so now the fun part comes where we can start to install stuff. You can see I already put the IAG oil fill neck in there. It's got that tube with the fitting off to the side. This ultimately is gonna plug into the bottom of the can itself. So the next thing we need to do is get a 15mm socket and find this bolt right here, or this nut right here. Remove that guy. This is a nut for a ground strap. I'm gonna leave the ground strap there. We're gonna remove the nut because we're gonna replace it with one that comes in the kit. Grab a 10mm socket, and we're gonna remove this nut. We are gonna reuse this guy, but this is where the other side of the bracket's gonna install. And then our can is just basically gonna live right here. So make sure I don't drop that. We have our coolant hoses already there. And what we can do is plug this guy in there. That was our oil return line. Get up above this wire harness that I have dangling there. And there we go. Now I'm gonna grab the nut that comes in the kit. Be careful, our intake pipe is wide open. Don't wanna be dropping anything in there. There we go. That guy is installed. Yeah. Cool. So let's tighten that guy down and we can start running the rest of the hoses. All right, so now that we got our can installed, I went ahead and put a clamp on the coolant line because we're going to install our 2 coolant lines that go into the heat exchanger inside the can itself. So the first thing we're looking for is this flat section here. So it's just bare hose. This is going to tie into the engine block. So we're going to remove the factory hose. We're going to install this one. We're going to use needle nose pliers to take this clamp and move it right down onto the fitting. Then we're going to take the factory hose and that's going to tie into this 90-degree fitting. This way we're now routing coolant into the can and then it goes back into the engine block. So we're good to go. So let's get everything installed there, show you what it looks like, and then we can keep moving forward with the installation. All right, so we have our IAG hose attached to the engine block. We had the new clamp moved down. Nice secure fitting there. We got our other end of the IAG hose tied in with that 90-degree fitting that came on the hose into our factory one. Remove this clamp, moved it into position. That's all clamped down. Now what I'm gonna do is grab some zip ties and just kind of clean this guy up as we go. So everything looks nice and neat because there is gonna be a lot of tubing here and we wanna make sure that it looks good as the can itself. So let's get that stuff cleaned up and then we'll get into the next step here. All right, so now the next thing we need to do is install our driver's side PCV hose. Now you get 2 hoses in the kit. One hose that has a sensor attachment. My truck did not have a sensor, so we're not going to use this. So what we're going to do is find the non-sensor replacement one. It's got a 90-degree fitting, quick connect fitting on one side, and then it's got an angled one on the opposite side. So we're going to use that one. The angled portion is going to tie into the bottom port here on the can. The 90 is going to tie into the engine. So it's super simple. Basically just going to run this guy right like so. Clips right in there, and then this guy is going to tie in like this, but I think I'm going to run the tubing like this just to keep things nice and clean looking. There we go. And you know it's a clean connect because it clicks like that. And then what we'll do is we'll zip tie things out of the way so it's not rubbing up against anything, but we're good to go on that one. All right, now it is time to install our passenger side PCV pipe, my God. All right, but before we do that, we gotta install the black fitting that comes in the kit. I went ahead and removed the brown one. We're gonna hold on to that because we are gonna reuse that. You can see it's a little bit of a one-way piece there, so that's why you gotta reuse the factory one once we get to that part. But we just take our one that came in the IAG kit, line it up, and it should pop right in just like the oil fill neck did, and it'll clip into place. There we go. All right, now that that is installed, we got this massive tube here with a 90 in the middle. This is our passenger side one. So we're gonna route this guy behind the engine, and then it's gonna pop up onto this fitting here. So I gotta figure out what's the best route. All right, so I have the passenger side PCV pipe installed. You can see it connects right there, and then it wraps around the back of the engine, cuts up by the driver's side PCV pipe, and then connects right into our AOG can or AOS can. So now what I'm gonna do is be really smart with where I'm putting zip ties just to hold everything up out of the way so it keeps it away from heat sources. And then we could jump into the final step, which is the last 2 or 3 hoses, I believe. And then we are done for the install. So let's keep rolling here. All right, so quick stock check of where we're at. I did reroute a few things just because it looked a little bit better and it took a little bit of the stress off some of the tubing here. So ended up running the passenger side PCV tube over across the top of the engine here. I'm gonna zip tie it down once I'm done running everything. I know in the installation video, they show throwing zip ties as they go, but for me, it makes more sense to get all your tubing in place and then go ahead and zip tie things because I was moving things around quite a bit. I did move these guys around a few times before I landed on this being the final home for now. So next thing we need to do is install the last few pieces here. So we're gonna find this little pipe right here, this little tubing. It's got a 90 and then it's got a fitting here on the end. That fitting is so you could take that brown valve, and we're just gonna install that guy just like that. This is gonna route around the back of the engine. This 90 is gonna attach right to this little fitting here on the top of the can. And then we're gonna tie this guy into the brown fitting, and that's gonna go back into the factory PCV fitting on this side, on the passenger side of the engine. Then the last piece we're gonna install is this guy. So the 90 portion goes into this front facing port on top of the can, and then the angled portion is gonna go down onto our turbo inlet pipe, which is the other end of that orange piece that we had to break earlier in the installation. So this is gonna tie into that. And then from there, all the plumbing is done. All right, so we have all of our plumbing run. You got our catch can right there. We have our passenger side PCV hose going in, cutting across the top of the engine, cutting around the back. You can see I went ahead and zip tied up everything. That way nothing's rattling around. The worst thing, or the last thing you want to have happen, is some of these rubber hoses to be rattling or vibrating while you're driving along the road. Eventually it wears a hole. So just check and make sure that you're installing it next to things that are not sharp or hot, and then zip tie things down nice and firmly, but not too tight that you end up crushing the hose, because you will end up with issues. But anyway, here's a look at the hose routing. Goes around the back of the engine, comes up on the front. You can see where I added some of the zip ties, and then the top portion there, that was attached to the brown nipple that attached to the passenger side PCV, which was right there. And then we have our driver's side one that goes into our turbo inlet pipe right down there. Very easy. I like the fact that all of the fittings on here are quick connect, so you can connect it, and if you don't like where you ran the tubing, you can pull it off and reconnect it. So the last thing now is, let's go grab our engine cover, use that little template we have over there, put that on there, and that'll show us where we cut, and then we could get that guy reinstalled, get our intake reinstalled, and then we are done with the project. So let's roll. All right, guys, I have good news. The engine cover on my Raptor does not need to be modified. Now, the template that they provide, it's right here. This is actually for the plastic engine cover that comes on some other 3.5 EcoBoost engines. We don't need that in our case, which is awesome. But while we're on the topic of things we don't need on this installation that come in the box, again, you have that PCV pipe here that or PCV tube, sorry, I keep calling things pipe, PCV tube here that has a sensor inlet here. We did not have a sensor on our truck, so we didn't use this one. We used the alternative tubing that they provided in the kit. And then if you do have the sensor, they also give you an extended harness here for when you have to relocate that new sensor, so you can plug right back in and maintain all the factory connections. But those are the things that you don't use. Everything else is used. Everything else is fully installed here. Let's just get our intake installed. We can fire up the truck, test for leaks, and then from that point, we are done with the installation. All right, so we got the engine running here. Now, I did want to show you, I am running into one minor little leak, and it's on the coolant hose from the catch can that ties into the engine block. So let's see if we can get that. We zoom in right there, you can see it's where that AOS black clamp is made to basically tighten up that hose onto the engine block. So what I'm gonna do, I tried a few times to get that tight enough, it's not working out really well. So what I'm gonna do is go out and get a really small hose clamp, one of those worm gear hose clamps, and just use that. I think that'll be a nicer fix than the black one there. I think maybe I bent it too much when I was trying to tighten it onto the hose itself, and it's just not fully seating it. So anyway, just this minor little leak. Other than that, everything else is running perfectly fine. So we are good in that sense, but again, just that little coolant one, little tiny guy, and I don't want to leave that one unattended. So let's go out and get a tiny little hose clamp, very similar to those guys right there on the intake, and then we could close this one down. All right, folks, we did end up solving our coolant leak issue, and I will say it's probably more so an installer issue than anything. So those black clamps, they could be really sensitive to overpressure. So I was using needle nose pliers early in the install to move that clamp out of the way, and then to eventually slide it up onto the tube down below so I can make a nice, tight fitting on it. Unfortunately, those are really sensitive to crimping them too much, and what ends up happening is you bend them out of shape. But rest assured, we have the solution for that, and that is right here. So a 5/8 inch little pipe clamp was all we needed. This pops on the hose, and then it gives you a nice way to get a nice secure fit on that pipe, so that, or on that hose, so that you don't have any sort of leakage issues. But anyway, we've been driving around for a little bit of the weekend here, and there are no issues with this, no codes, nothing, and we didn't expect anything. And really, when you install this and when you have a successful install with the AOS, it should be uneventful, right? You should not really feel any sort of difference. This is more of a longevity thing than a performance and a seat of your pants dyno felt upgrade on your truck. But anyway, that's how you install the IAG AOS. If you have any comments or questions on this one, leave them down in the description below. I will be glad to help you out on this one. Hopefully this helps you with your installation on your 2021 or newer EcoBoost, or even if you're looking at this for another car and you're just interested in what the installation looks like, this is what I hope to be one of the more comprehensive ones. But again, like I said, any questions, leave them down below. On that note, peace. See ya.